Have you ever sat in a classroom and felt completely unseen? Or perhaps watched as your child struggled to connect with what they were learning because it didn't reflect their life? If so, you've witnessed the absence of cultural relevance in education. Welcome to Mind Your Business, a podcast where we work to unravel the business of everyday life, seeking wisdom and sharing insights that help us navigate this journey called life. I'm your host, Sherry Crocker, here to inspire or give you a fresh perspective. Come join us as we mind your business in all of the things that matter to you and yours. Hey there, and welcome to the very first episode of Roots and Relevance, Empowering Black Futures. Again, I'm your host, Sherry Crocker, and today we're laying the groundwork for this podcast by exploring a question that's both simple and profound. Why does cultural relevance in education matter, especially for Black students or students of color and their communities? I want to kick things off with a story that shaped the way I think about this topic. When I was a middle school student, our class was assigned a science project, better yet, a research project, and we could choose any person that was significant and share their contributions with the rest of the class. Well, I chose to present on Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker was one of the most fascinating entrepreneurs in history, and I thought that this would be a fantastic research project for me. So when it was time to do our reports, I raised my hand because I was so excited and I wanted to tell the world about Madam C.J. Walker. So as soon as I opened up my mouth to speak, my teacher said, "That's not part of our curriculum." In that moment, I realized that stories like mine, Black stories, didn't seem to matter in the broader educational narrative. That experience stuck with me. It was the first time I recognized the importance of cultural representation in education, though I didn't have the words for it yet. Today, we call that cultural relevance, and that's what this episode is all about. So let's dive in. What is cultural relevance and responsiveness? At its core, cultural relevance in education means designing and delivering learning experiences that affirm students' cultural identities, their cultural histories, and their lived experiences. It's about ensuring that students see themselves, whether in textbooks, discussions, or leadership. It allows students to know and feel that their cultural heritage is valued as a legitimate part of what's being taught. On the flip side, cultural responsiveness takes it a step further. It's an intentional practice that educators use to adapt their teaching methods and their environment to meet the diverse cultural needs of their students. It's not just about acknowledgement, it's about action. Together, cultural relevance and responsiveness creates classrooms where students thrive, not in spite of their identities, but because of them. You may be asking, well, why are they critical for Black students or students of color and their communities? Well, to understand the critical importance of cultural relevance for Black students and students of color, let's take a look at a brief history of education in America. Black education has always been a site of both resistance and the resilience of Black Americans. From the clandestine reading circles of the enslaved to the creation of historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs, education has been central to Black liberation. Yet, public schools have historically erased, devalued, or misrepresented Black culture and its contributions. When Black students don't see themselves reflected in their learning environments, or when they encounter deficit narratives about their communities, it sends a subtle but damaging message. You don't belong here. That's not just harmful for students, but it's also a disservice to society as a whole because it limits everyone's understanding of the diverse fabric of our history and humanity. There are some current relevance as well. Research consistently shows that culturally relevant education improves academic outcomes, builds self-esteem, and fosters a sense of belonging. When Black students see their culture reflected and respected, they engage more deeply. They take pride in their learning and develop a stronger sense of identity. And the beliefs extend beyond the classroom. They ripple out into their families, their communities, and the social sphere today. So it's not just about education, it's about empowerment. The power of representation is amazing. Let me just take you back to that middle school history class. Imagine for a moment a room full of kids, all sharing their assigned historical figures, and not one of them reflects the diverse experiences in our class. When I tried to shine a light on Madam C.J. Walker, one of the most inspiring figures in our history, it felt like I was speaking into a void. That silence. It wasn't just about me. It was about the countless students of color who've had their stories overlooked or dismissed. Contrast that with a moment I experienced later in college where a professor explicitly brought into literature the Harlem Renaissance, music from jazz pioneers, and political works by W.E.B. Du Bois. That classroom felt alive. It felt like a place where I belonged. That's the power of cultural relevance. It transforms not just the way you see the curriculum, but the way you see yourself. This podcast is here to spark those transformations. Each episode will explore practical, historical, and personal aspects of cultural relevance and responsiveness, always with a focus of empowering the Black community through education. Here's a quick preview of what's coming up on Mind Your Business. We'll dive into what it means to be a culturally responsive leader and how leadership can shift the trajectory for Black students. We'll talk about the legacy of historically Black colleges and universities and the lessons they offer all educators. We'll confront issues like implicit bias in the classroom and offer strategies for tackling it head on. And of course, we'll celebrate the power of community in building schools that affirm, inspire, and uplift. Whether you're a parent, teacher, student, or just someone passionate about education, this podcast is for you. Together, we're going to explore how cultural relevance isn't just a buzzword. It's a lifeline for building a better future. That's the way to go. I like this warm embrace. Can I stay for long? As we close this first episode, I want to leave you with a challenge. Take a moment to think about your own educational journey. Were there moments when your culture or identity was celebrated? How did that shape you? If not, what might have changed if it had been? Reflecting on these questions is the first step in recognizing why cultural relevance matters so deeply. Thank you for joining me today on this journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who care about equity and empowerment. I'll see you next time on Roots and Relevance, Empowering Black Futures. Until then, mind your business and stay connected, empowered, and inspired.